Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 225, Adversary. Feng Quan kneeled by the side of the couch and personally sampled the medicine that was about to be fed to Li Jianting. Li Jianting's face was pale, and her temples were covered in cold sweats as she lay trembling on the couch. She was covered with a quilt, yet she looked like she was being crushed beneath it. Faint whimpers and sobs escaped her throat alongside her urgent gasps for breath. The imperial physician inside the palace did not dare to be careless with his diagnosis. He took Li Jianting's pulse again and again through the lowered bed curtains and wiped his sweat from time to time as he repeated the prescription to the people beside him. Kong Qiu had faced this kind of situation twice with Hai Lianji, but this was the first time it had happened since he took charge. His hands that were under his sleeves were slicked with sweat, and even when his sweat dripped into his eyes, he did not dare to blink. If the heir apparent were to pass away, Kong Qiu did not dare to think of the repercussions. He closed his eyes with some effort and thought back to that downpour during the public ditches incident. Just how much of a resolve did Hai Lianji have to steel himself with to say those kinds of words? Teacher. Kong Qiu could not help but clench his teeth. If only teacher was still around. Kong Qiu was at such a loss for words now that he was even overwhelmed by the intense sense of powerlessness as he listened to the heir apparent's breaking up voice. The medicinal decoction was poured down Li Jianting's throat. Her eyeballs were still swiveling. It was as if she was being bound in place by her nightmare. Feng Quan kneeled for an entire day. During the interval of time when the palace maids at the sides retreated, he plucked up the courage to gently brush away Li Jianting's damp hair and watched as Li Jianting's expressions underwent a myriad of changes. The casualties of this game extended far beyond to the innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. Whether or not the heir apparent survived, the palace maids and eunuchs serving the heir apparent in her palace were already condemned to death. Feng Quan had to find a way out in this pressing emergency. He still had unfinished business. Li Jianting must not die. Your Highness, Feng Quan quietly called out to Li Jianting in a whisper. Due to the close proximity, he saw the tiny hole in Li Jianting's earlobe. He steeled himself and said, Your Highness struggled to get out of the pleasure quarters and is merely just a step away from the imperial throne. If you lose heart now, you will fail at the last hurdle just when success is within reach. Your Highness. It was as if Li Jianting could not hear him. Her fingers clutched at the bedding tightly. She might have been lying in this exquisite splendor, but her mind was still trapped in the world's foulest brothel. A whimper of a sob lingered in Li Jianting's throat. That was a plea for mercy she made when she was being beaten. Heavens made a fool of her, giving her such an identity but had her born a girl. The jingling of earring blended into the din of tables and chairs toppling over. She fell among them countless times, dragged by her hair before those repulsive men. Xiang Yun was a good procuress. She knew how to make the most out of her girls. Asterisk. Ling Ting was a girl adopted by Xiang Yun, but she was not special, for Xiang Yun had adopted many number of children. Xiang Yun would lift their heads by the chin to scrutinize them carefully, and from then on, the trajectory of their future paths was decided. Ling Ting was a pretty one, but she was not likable. As Xiang Yun looked her over, she found that these eyes of hers were surprisingly loathsome. You look quite pretty, but also much too fierce. Xiang Yun tapped her pipe. Might as well blind these eyes. Only then will them cloudy eyes inspire pity in the various lords. Ling Ting was thin and small. Xiang Yun fed her food and did not really blind her eyes, and for that, Ling Ting was very grateful to Xiang Yun. Every day, she watched the men going in and out of Shangyun Villa to be pleased by the courtesans in the brothel. She had no designated master. Instead, she spent all day running barefoot in the corridors serving tea and water for the courtesans, watching them as they applied rouge powder and perfume. Girls really smell so nice. Ling Ting kneeled by the door with her hands on the rug as she sneakily sniffed at the fragrance inside like a little puppy. She watched those ample, voluptuous bodies drape themselves with outfits of silk and satin, and watched as those long and slender fingers put on bracelets of gold and jade. She also listened as those courtesans spoke in their sweet, delicate voices, like the pleasant trills of orioles. They fascinated her, making her yearn for the world of women. With a gorgeous, colorful shawl over her shoulders, Qiang Yun stopped beside Ling Ting, looking much like a willow branch swaying in the wind. She had drunk wine, and there was a thin sheen of glow on her face as she chuckled dreamily and bent over to cup Ling Ting's face. "Doggy. Here, I'll put an earring on you." A pearl that was dangling from that golden thread slid down coldly along the contour of Ling Ting's ear and fell onto the rug. Ling Ting stared at Qiang Yun in a daze. Qiang Yun, having already straightened up, laughed as she walked off. "Madam has an important guest today." A courtesan inside tossed a vermilion hairpin into the jewelry box. She looked like she could not hold her liquor as she continued, "The second young master of the Prince of Libay." A chorus of giggles rang out from the inner room. Ling Ting did not know who the Prince of Libay was, nor did she know who the second young master was. She carefully picked up the pearl earring and quietly grasped it in her hand. Drinks were to be served in the brothel in the evening. Ling Ting followed the maidservants in and saw Prince Chu reclining on the couch. He was so drunk he was babbling nonsense. Several noble clans' young masters had been invited along as well, but Qiang Yun ignored them all. She sat demurely beside a person's chair, so prim and proper was she that she resembled a fine lady from a distinguished family. Xiao Qiye was wearing raven blue-colored regular robes, although this way of dressing could not put a muzzle to his frivolousness. He seemed to have drunk wine too, sitting with his arms put up on the chair as he played dice with the young master at the side. Ling Ting stood in attendance by the side to pour wine for the distinguished guests, doing so for half a night until everyone at the table was drunk. Li Jianheng kept tugging at Qiang Yun to keep pestering her to drink up, while Xiao Qiye seemed to have played to his heart's content, although he had never once touched the courtesans at the feast. Reeking of wine, Li Jianheng pointed out at Xiao Qiye to Qiang Yun. "This is my best friend. The son of the Prince of Libay. He's been on the battlefield," he belched and giggled cheekily. "Cian is the real deal." Xiao Qiye burst out into hearty laughter. He lowered his long fingers to toss the dice into the wine vessel, and said with a dismissive, laid-back attitude, "The battlefield stinks to high heavens. How could it be as comfortable as lying in the arms of beautiful women? This second young master is going to drink himself into a drunken stupor here." Li Jianheng pushed Qiang Yun over. Xiao Qiye's hand slipped, and he moved to catch the falling golden vessel. Subsequently, Qiang Yun fell into the arms of another. They drank until they puked, and when they finally retired for a rest, the room was a scene of total mayhem. Under the sounds of the snores, Ling Ting remembered the earring she still held in her palm. She saw a corner of a mirror exposed in the inner room, so she stood on tiptoe and quietly held up the earring to her earlobe in the mirror. The pearl swung among the fine strands of her hair, glowing resplendently. So pretty. Ling Ting was just thinking this when she suddenly heard the sound of wine being overturned, which startled her so much she hastily retracted her hand. As she peeped, she realized that the second young master from Libay was still awake. Xiao Qiye did not look at anyone. He was clearly right in the middle of all this dazzling opulence, and yet he also seemed distant from it all. He did not head into a room, nor did he ask for the courtesans to accompany him. His arm was still hanging over the chair as he gazed out of the opened window in the direction of Libay with a piercing expression and sober eyes. Ling Ting retreated out of the door and wiped the sweat-stained earring clean. She kept it away, close to her body, and slept with it hidden under her clothes. Not long later, Qiang Yun recalled the earring she had cast away. She summoned Ling Ting to her. While doing her makeup in the mirror, she twisted around and suddenly smiled, "Already 12 years old now, I see." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Li Jianting vomited out all the medical decoction in her throat. The palace maids brought over clean hot water, and Feng Quan rinsed the handkerchief in it to wipe down Li Jianting. The world before a semi-conscious Li Jianting was a blur. She felt the hot handkerchief wipe over her temples, the water droplets dripping down like tears. The heir apparent did not wear earring, but Ling Ting did. Livestock, an agonized voice escaped between Li Jianting's teeth. Livestock. That pretty golden thread of the earring Ling Ting wore flowed among her tears. She struggled to break free, but she was dragged back again and again. She cried and shouted as her head was pressed down, the banging of which caused her forehead to bruise. "Let me go." Ling Ting sobbed, her raised face wet with sweat and tears. She stared at the closed door, attempting to find a gleam of hope there. "Madam," Ling Ting shouted, herself hoarse. "Spare me." Only the sound of a slap answered her. "Livestock." Li Jianting's trembling fingers clenched the bedding until it creased. Her chest heaved violently. In those never-ending wails, she recognized herself for who she was. She was a livestock. From the very moment she was born, she was reduced to being nothing more than a sacrifice abandoned in the world's filthiest place, where she became trapped in this narrow and cramped room in the end. Through the crack, she realized everything she had seen in the past was but a mere illusion. Not one of those girls had escaped such a fate. They were all livestock at the mercy of others. Ling Ting raised her hand and dug into the crack with her broken nails. Why was she born a girl? This body was so nauseating. Ling Ting raked away at that crack like a madwoman and howled outside through those streaks of blood. "Madam," she said with vehement hatred, "kill me. If she survived this. If she could live like a human being. Ling Ting pressed against her forehead as she cried and laughed at the earring on the ground. She would kill herself, peel away this layer of skin and flesh, and discard all that had to do with being a girl. She would fight, tear her foes apart with her fangs, and claim back what was rightfully hers. If only she was given a chance. "Your Highness." Feng Quan could not help but raise his voice when he saw Li Jianting vomiting again. The imperial physician in the outer room had already stood up. Kong Qiu's heart went cold, and he staggered a few hasty steps back. Sen Yu held him in support. If Kong Qiu could not bring himself to say it. The hanging screen at the door lifted with a swish. Xue Xiaozuo's breathing was still ragged. He heard the movement in the inner room and understood what Kong Qiu had left unsaid. However, he was not a physician who could perform miraculous recoveries, he was too powerless in this respect. The atmosphere in the palace was so heavy and somber that the court officials did not even dare to breathe loudly. The palace maids went in and out carrying the medicine in their hands. Feng Quan kept feeding Li Jianting medicine one bowl after another. Li Jianting mumbled to herself. Unable to hear what she was saying herself, as Feng Quan could only kneel and lower his head close to Li Jianting's lips. Fail, Li Jianting's lips quivered. Last hurdle. Sweat water saturated Feng Quan's eyes under the dimness of the lowered bed curtain. He covered his lips and said softly, "Your Highness is the true phoenix of this world. As long as you can hang in there and survive through this, you will definitely be able to turn misfortunes into blessings." Li Jianting's urgent breathing hitched, as if she could finally hear what Feng Quan was saying. The whimpers and sobs in her throat gradually subsided. The medicinal decoction was poured down her throat before she choked and coughed it out through her mouth and nose. The palace maids were in such a state of panic that they prostrated themselves on the ground and cried. Ignoring everyone else, Feng Quan kept watch by the bed and fed the heir apparent her medicine again. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Liang Qiushan, who was still keeping watch on the prison cell, was burning with anxiety. He finished up an entire pot of tea and stood outside to wait for news. The stars overhead shone bright and resplendent, although he was too preoccupied to admire the moonlight in the courtyard, for he had heard the storm of footsteps coming from outside the courtyard. What is this? Liang Qiushan could not help but take 2 steps when he saw the 8 great training divisions enter. The man at the head raised his authority token and said, "The warrant from the Ministry of Justice clearly states to arrest Pan Xiangji, yet you people dared to abuse your public position for private interests. Our Viceroy Han is supervising the case on orders of the Empress Dowager, so release him now." Liang Qiushan knew this to be the critical moment. Release Han Cheng, and they would not be able to hold on to Pan Xiangji and Pan Lin too, so he gritted his teeth, squared his shoulders, and raised his head. "I am here on the heir apparent and the senior grand secretary's orders to investigate Han Cheng. Without a written order from the heir apparent and senior grand secretary, I will not release him." The man pressed a few steps closer towards him. "Heir apparent? The current ruler of the world is the Empress Dowager." Liang Qiushan looked at him in horror. Seeing the 8 great training divisions bearing down on him menacingly, he stepped back. "What are you people planning to do? Spies from Zongbo have infiltrated Chu capital. We have sealed the city gate." The man hung his authority token back at the side of his waist. "Naturally, we have to conduct a careful search. Search the compound." Everyone from the 8 great training divisions came armed with their blades, so this search was obviously not as simple as it sounded. Liang Qiushan understood it in an instant. The Dan City case was pushing the Empress Dowager into such a corner that she was driven to take desperate measures the way a cornered dog would jump over a wall. She could no longer tolerate and accommodate them. "I am an appointed official of the imperial court," Liang Qiushan repeatedly retreated in the face of those sharp blades. The 3 ministries' officials who were also in charge of hearing this case fell back too. They were all civil officials, so how could they hold their own against such intimidation? Their past experience at the Nanlin hunting grounds during the reign of Xiand returned to haunt the officials, who already had the premonition that a storm was brewing. "Commander-in-Chief Qi is still in Chu capital, and yet you dare to be so lawless." Liang Qiushan, having already retreated to the entrance of the prison, bluffed. "Guards of Qidong, show yourselves now." The 8 great training divisions men at the entrance promptly drew their blades and surveyed their surroundings with part anxiousness and part skepticism. Qi Zuyan's guards were all battle-hardened, and there were also thousands of Qidong garrison troops standing guard outside the city. The 8 great training divisions merely wanted to seize the opportunity while the heir apparent was critically ill to get a head start and kill off these court officials under the pretext of them being spies from Zongbo. Once day broke, the Qidong garrison troops would be too powerless to save the situation even if they charged into the city. Liang Qiushan took the chance to retreat into the prison and secured the chain around the door from inside. He spread his arms apart and pushed back the officials behind him, and everyone fled inward in a panic. The 8 great training divisions' blades twisted their way into the chain, pushing so hard against the door that it clattered noisily. The man said with a malignant smile through the door, "Doggone official. Do you think you are safe just by locking the door? Light the fire." Pan Xiangji, who was in the innermost part of the prison, exclaimed in a panic, "Stop! Don't set fire. Commander Han is still in here. You can't burn us all down." Liang Qiushan raised the oil lamp and continued, "Those 2 corrupted officials deserve to be burned to death. However, the flames will surely attract the attention of the garrison troops outside the city, and when the garrison troops fight their way in, it will be you rebels that they will kill." The man outside drew back his blade from the crack with a gloomy and uncertain expression on his face. The Empress Dowager did indeed give the order not to alert the Qidong garrison troops outside the city. The heir apparent's life was hanging by a mere thread. He estimated the time and reckoned that since there was still no news from the palace after all this time, the heir apparent was likely already dead. Thus, he set his mind at ease, and his expression brightened up a little. "Your Excellency Liang." As he spoke, he raised a hand to motion for the squad behind him to circle around. "You currently serve in the Ministry of Revenue, where you see shiny money rolling in and out all day, and yet you are still staying in a run-down courtyard. Why do this to yourself? You might as well take this opportunity to cross over to our side where the pastures are greener and your future is bright. Liang Qiushan's heart pounded. Happy to stall for time, he said to the other man, with that bit of salary I have, I'm content to live in a run-down courtyard. It's only when you have a great tree backing you that you can relax in the shade. This man was Han Cheng's trusted aide. Pacing, he said unhurriedly, it's a raging storm out there. How many more days of peace does Chu capital still have left? Serve a good master as soon as you can. Only then can you continue to serve the imperial court in the future. We don't walk the same paths. The Son of Heaven is who we pledge our loyalty to. That is to say, Great Zhou, the empire of the Li clan. If we were to switch to someone else, then wouldn't that be a subversion of ethics and virtues? The oil lamp in Liang Qiushan's hand was about to burn out. He continued, I'd advise you to lay down your blade and repent. It's not too late to see the errors of your ways now. When the heir apparent ascends to the throne, she will still remember this meritorious service of yours. The man tsked lightly. In that case, you can see yourself to hell alongside the heir apparent. He had only just said that when Liang Qiushan heard the small metal window on the wall being broken open. The 8 great training divisions threw a smoking bundle of straw inside. Smoke instantly filled the interior of the prison, choking the officials until they covered their mouths with their sleeves and coughed with tears in their eyes. Pan Xiangzhe was even more certain that the Empress Dowager wanted to kill him. With shackles on his hands, he held onto the bars and yelled under the sounds of coughing, Changshen, open, cough, open the door. Han Cheng was startled awake too. He knocked over the teapot on the table and wetted his sleeves to cover his nose and mouth. Liang Qiushan was choked to the point that he could barely stand firmly on his feet. The officials behind him knocked over the table and chairs. All of them stumbled into the prison, holding their breath for just a moment before stepping onto the table and chairs to hold onto the metal window in an attempt to breathe. The moment their heads popped into sight, the 8 great training division soldiers waiting outside and jabbed their blades in to stab them. You're a low-level general function staff from the public ditches case who later went on to be promoted, the man said. And Shen Zequan was the Jin Yue who came down to work together with the Ministry of Revenue at that time, so it seems that you're the greatest spy Zongbo planted in Chu capital. Vice Minister Pan had you investigate the case, and you colluded with Shui Yanqing to tamper with the accounts books on the sly to frame Vice Minister Pan and throw him into prison. You did so to muddy the waters in Chu capital, am I right? Liang Qiushan had indeed been promoted by Shen Zequan, but he had no involvement whatsoever with Zongbo. Regardless of his position in Juexi or He province, he had gone by the book. Not once had he ever corresponded via letter with Shen Zequan. So on hearing the other man putting it this way, he promptly rebuffed, slander. This smoke was really going to be the death of them. Pan Xiangzhe had already started to smash the door, pleading as he coughed, Kongshen, open the door quick. It was not just Pan Xiangzhe who could not stand it, even the officials beside Liang Qiushan could not stand it either. Everyone was forced into a dead end, trapped between the devil and the deep blue sea here. If things did not take a turn for the better soon, they were all going to suffocate to death. Several wardens pulled at the chains. Unable to stop them in time, Liang Qiushan watched as the prison door opened wide and the men around them scrambled over themselves to flee their ways out. They bumped into him, causing him to stumble, but before he could shout, he heard the blood-curdling screams of the officials who had run out as the 8 great training divisions men beheaded them on the spot. Mad, Liang Qiushan supported himself against the wall and covered his face. You people have gone mad. As he was saying so, he received a heavy blow on his back as someone behind him kicked him over to the ground. Han Cheng spat at Liang Qiushan, covered up his nose and mouth again, and said in a muffled voice, "It's you band of rebels who are being purged tonight." The branches that had begun to sprout in the courtyard rustled as the wind blew up the scattered pages of the account books on the ground and sent them flying all over. Han Cheng's black boots broke the brush he stepped on. He kicked away the corpse at the side and patted away the dust and ashes on his robe under the stench of smoke and blood. Liang Qiushan was hoisted out with blades pressing against his neck. His wuxia hat had long fallen off, and his hair was a disheveled mess. Gasping heavily, he said, "Even if the Empress Dowager kills the heir apparent, this empire will not belong to her. You bunch of treacherous court officials, destroying the 100-year legacy of our Li clan's empire." He was so overwhelmed with grief and sorrow that for a moment, he could not continue. Liang Qiushan initially thought he would meet his maker today for sure, but the wind unexpectedly and suddenly brought with it a swift whistle. Then, sunlight broke through the horizon, and the golden glazed tiles of Chu capital's palace instantaneously started to glint. Qizuyan spurred her horse on at full speed and with the raise of its hooves, broke open the gates to the courtyard. As she reined in the horse, she raised her authority token. "I'm here on the order of the heir apparent," she stared down Han Cheng as her horse's hooves landed on the ground, "to supervise the capital troops' search of the city." Han Cheng did not believe her. He forced a smile and said, "The heir apparent's life is in imminent peril. How would she have been able to give orders to you? I know you are anxious to save them, but you mustn't falsify the orders of the heir apparent." Qizuyan took out the deployment order from her sleeves and tossed it into Han Cheng's arms. "The heir apparent's seal. Do you recognize it?" Han Cheng looked at the skewed writing in red ink on the document, which was clearly an order someone approved by holding onto the heir apparent's hand. He fell silent for a moment, his mind parsing over the situation in Chu capital. The city gate had already been sealed off, and the 8 great training divisions still had 20,000 men. Qizuyan had traveled light into the capital, and there were only 2,000 soldiers from the garrison troops accompanying her on the journey. If he made a move right now, they would still have a chance of emerging victorious. "Before I set off," Qizuyan bent over and her wuzu ornament swung smoothly in the air, "I specifically instructed my old father at home to send someone to pick me up if I didn't return in half a month." Han Cheng clenched the deployment order between his fingertips and looked Qizuyan in the eyes. "Commander-in-Chief Qi once said the same thing at the Nanlin hunting grounds. My head is not my own." Qizuyan smiled. "I have to be careful somehow." Back then, the Empress Dowager stood her ground over the dissenting views to fulfill Commander-in-Chief Qi's wish. Han Cheng put on a fake smile as he stuffed the deployment order into his sleeve. How could she have thought it would end like this? Oh, well. Liang Qiushan fell to the ground. He picked up his wuxia hat in his arms and bowed to Qizuyan. "We have Commander-in-Chief Qi's foresight to thank for. Otherwise, it'd have been a bloodbath today." Qizuyan said nothing as she watched Han Cheng retreat. It was only when the 8 great training divisions withdrew as well that she moved away the hand that had been pressing down on Zhuju. What foresight could she have? She was merely scaring Han Cheng. Qizuyan's heart sank slightly. A 20,000-strong capital troops were indeed a thorny issue. The Empress Dowager dared to act this way today only because she was sure that they would hold back from taking action lest the innocents were caught in the crossfire. She knew they would not dare to gamble on Li Jianting's life. ******. Li Jianting's breathing had already stabilized. All the eunuchs and maidservants in her palace had been rounded up and taken down to prison. The poisoning of the heir apparent was by no means a trivial matter. For all the safety precautions that Xue Xiaozuo had in place, he still did not manage to guard against the Empress Dowager. The inner palace was a place far beyond his reach. Outside of the palace, Kong Qiu said, "These eunuchs are all narrow-minded and short-sighted. They would dare to claim the life of the Son of Heaven if they had suffered indignities before the Master and had been instigated by others. This incident has to be rigorously investigated, and the perpetrators, severely punished once they have confessed it all." Kong Qiu used to manage the Ministry of Justice, and he did not get along with Pan Rugui and the rest of the eunuchs. Influenced by Hai Lianji, he abhorred the eunuchs to the core. He finished up the strong tea in his hand and said to Shuiziaozuo, since the thieves have been caught with the loots in the Dan city's case, then once the fields have been resurveyed, go by the books and weed out the 6 ministries. See exactly how many people are implicated in this. Shuiziaozuo's spirits lifted. He understood that Kong Qiu meant to settle the full score with the noble clans, so he nodded his head in acknowledgement. Sen Yu, who was at the side, seemed as if he had something to say. But in the end, he did not voice it out. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The curtain had only just fallen on the battle in Chu capital when Shenzhequan, who was far away in Duan province, received the news. The sun was shining bright high up in the sky today. Ding Tao and Li Xiong were sitting on the veranda having a match by throwing fruit pits that had been gnawed clean into water puddles. Fei Sheng was unable to free his hands as he was holding onto a bowl of medicine. Qiao Tianya lifted them up directly by the back of their collars. Ding Tao covered his head with his arms. We'll pick them up right away. I've been sitting here watching for half a day. Qiao Tianya flicked his forehead. Aren't you already 17 or 18 of age, Tao Er? Why do you look to me like you still have yet to wean off milk? The fruit peel still in Ding Tao's mouth was so bitter that he frowned. He responded with the self-righteousness of one who was not in the wrong, none of you would send me on assignments, so I can only sit here and munch on seeds. Munch on seeds, Li Xiong parried. Qiao Tianya gave each of them a kick and ordered them to hurry and pick up the pits. He stood under the eaves and watched. A guard at the side came closer to say a word, and he turned back to see Shenzhequan drinking his medicine and Yao Wenyu in the midst of talking, so he nodded his head to the guard to give the go-ahead. Not long later, Yan Hira joyfully entered. He never wore the same outfit twice, but they all had to be embroidered with ingots and copper coins that shone so brightly he resembled a peacock striding proudly with its head high when he passed through the courtyard. Greetings, Commander-in-Chief Qiao. Congratulations on your promotion. Yan Hira wrapped his arms around his golden abacus before going up the steps. He craned his head to peer inside and whispered, "How has his lordship been lately?" Fei Sheng just happened to step out with the empty bowl in hand. He looked at Yan Hira with cool detachment and said, "Go on in and meet him and you'll know, won't you? Hurry up. His lordship is waiting." Yan Hira's dimples promptly materialized. As he went up the stairs, he said, "Of course I'll have to meet him. I'll miss him so much if I don't see him for a day." He smiled at Fei Sheng, squared his shoulders and walked past Fei Sheng's side at a distance away before making his way inside with a whoosh. "Your lordship." Yan Hira called out warmly. "I've been looking forward." The expression in Shenzhequan's eyes seemed to be a little frosty as he looked at Yan Hira from where he was beside the window, forcing Yan Hira to swallow back his words. Yan Hira quietly drew his feet back and asked in fright, "Greetings, your lordship." Sitting beside the table, Yao Wenyu drank his tea and did not look at him even when he heard him. Shenzhequan lifted his folding fan slightly and said, "Sit." How would Yan Hira dare to sit? He was here today to apologize and admit the error of his ways. He immediately pulled up a chair and gestured ardently for Shenzhequan to take his seat first. It was presently midday. An unknown species of a bird perched among the branches chirped intermittently. It got a little dry when the temperature rose outside, just the time for an afternoon nap. Shenzhequan ignored Yan Hira's ingratiating attempts and stood by the window, slightly backlit by the light. The thin breeze brushed his cheeks, sending the agate earrings swaying imperceptibly like the rippling waves under the glow of spring. Yan Hira saw nothing beautiful about this scene. All he could see was the terrifying expression in the prefectural lord's eyes, so intimidating was it in his silence that Yan Hira could barely stand steady on his feet. See, for a man like Shenzhequan. Yan Hira tried his best to let his mind wander and groused inwardly to himself. Once the fear of him had taken root, one would find this beauty of his akin to a blade. The more one looked at him, the more afraid one would be. It was absolutely baffling. I heard Chu capital is currently investigating the fields in Dan City. The pads of Shen Zequin's fingers rested against his folding fan. Have you heard any news of it? Yan Hiru had come prepared. He knew the prefectural lord was waiting for him to answer for his actions on his own. He immediately began. Sure I do. How would I dare not know? Your lordship, the granaries in those 8 cities are all a bluff. They had me sell the grains inside to Mount Luo and Fan province. The bandits all love to purchase them. At this point, he paused meekly, as if clueless about the matter. Didn't Chai Yu tell you about this? Of course Chai Yu had not said a thing. Chai Yu did all the legwork himself in Cha province for Yan Hiru, so how would he know where the grain he handled every year came from? Yan Hiru did not reveal a word of this to him and merely tricked him off by saying that they were grains from the He province's granary each time. All Chai Yu wanted was money, so he would not probe deeper into it at all. At any rate, one can't go wrong with laying the blame on the dead. Yan Hiru's eyes curved into a smile. Even if Shen Zequin was all-powerful, he could not bring Chai Yu back from the dead. This was also an oversight on my part. I forgot to notify your lordship of this. Yan Hiru put on an act. Punish me, your lordship. I didn't think this matter was of importance. Now that he put it that way, it did indeed seem to be the case. In any case, they were doing business in the east and would not be reselling grains in the future, so the page on past matters ought to have been turned. But if one delved deeper, that would no longer make any sense. What Shen Zequin had been forcing down in Zongbo was the price of grains that Yan Hiru had raised. Since the refugees from the 8 cities had fled into Zongbo, Shen Zequin had to estimate the surplus stock of the 8 cities before he could compete with them. Shen Zequin seemed to be considering something. He turned his head back to continue to look out of the window. You shifted away and emptied out the grains in the 8 cities' granaries. With the commoners' fields issue unable to be resolved by this year, the 8 cities and Chu capital can only requisition grains from Juexi, He province, and Huai province. So, it turns out you've been holding their lifeline in your hands all along. To Yan Hiru's ears, it sounded like Shen Zequin was complimenting him, but he did not dare to answer rashly because Shen Zequin was indeed a cunning one. Who knew if he was waiting for him to fall into a trap somewhere? Yan Hiru responded, I've turned over a new leaf after throwing in my lot with your lordship. I'm not into that business anymore, and they have long forgotten about me. You were able to obtain grains from Juexi in the past while hiding it from Zhongqing Shan. Unlike the situation in the 8 cities, you counted on Shi Hongxian. A bug landed on the edge of the window. Shen Zequin watched as it dodged here and there under his folding fan and continued, it only came to my mind recently. Shi Hongxian was reselling public grains, too. If both of you were to happen to run into each other in Juexi, how would he have been able to tolerate you? Shi Hongxian was the legitimate son of a noble clan. Moreover, he had his money vaults as insurance, so it was not unusual for him to be highly sought after in the official circles. It was too hard for Yan Hiru to insert himself into the public grains trade in Juexi. He had to have an unconventional gambit before he would have a fighting chance. Shen Zequin knew from reviewing that Dun province name list that the officials Yan Hiru bribed were all crooked men who had resold public grains and copper ores with Shi Hongxian before. With this leverage in hand, Yan Hiru followed behind Shi Hongxian, scavenging whatever he could, but it could not fill his stomach, and so he dipped his hands in the 8 cities' granaries. It was a coincidence. Yan Hiru grinned. That fat slob's second young master Shi had such a tight hold over Juexi, all thanks to his own money vaults, so I could only seek an alternative way out. The 8 great clans wanted to level the playing field among themselves, so naturally, they would not be willing to let Shi Hongxian eat up the sum of windfall profits. The Shi clan was already rich enough from lining their pockets. The Yan clan of He province was just the opposite. Yan Hiru was young, and there was no one in his clan who served in the imperial court. It was simply too convenient for the noble clans to hold him under their thumb. But this lad was so crafty that he made a sizable fortune as an intermediary, and through the pittance of profit he couldn't care any less about to the noble clans. That way, the noble clans still thought that they had profited. The interior of the hall fell silent after Yan Hiru was done talking. Yan Hiru seemed not to have noticed the murderous undercurrent of killing intent running beneath Shenzequin's silence as he continued with his hands behind his back. At the end of the day, his lordship is also happy to see it happen, yes. Shueziaozuo is so vicious to want to resurvey the 8 cities' crop fields. I don't even have to do any calculations to know that they will not be able to make up for the arrears in field taxes. It'll be a dog-eat-dog fight once they are pushed into the corner, and when the time comes, your lordship will be able to take down Chu capital effortlessly. Shenzequin turned slightly sideways to look at Yan Hiru again. Softly, he said, "Oh, so I'm supposed to be thanking you, huh?" Yan Hiru's hair stood on end. His dimples faded as he met Shenzequin's eyes and responded, "I'm just saying." "And that's the end of it?" Shenzequin asked. Yan Hiru almost wanted to laugh out loud, but he did not dare to. He knew it. Shenzequin wanted to seize the opportunity to fleece a sum of money out of him. Damn it! Yan Hiru fumed inwardly to himself. How much silver had Shenzequin successively allocated away from him after the 7th month last year? Sure, the trade route was valuable, but Yan Hiru had his eyes set even farther. He knew he could clearly earn more. Leaving aside the grain business Shenzequin had pulled the plug on, the grains to be transported to Qidong this year were the real money drainer. Then there was the new port that they were building right now in Jiuxi. Shenzequin was really going all out to rip him off. But he, too, had a way to push back. I heard last year that the second master was looking for the venerable master Yideng. Coincidentally, my men picked him up in He province last month. I rushed over without stopping this time precisely to inform the second master of this. Yan Hiru flicked the beads on his golden abacus. Does your lordship want him or not? Shenzequin raised his head slightly to look at Yan Hiru. Very softly, he started to chuckle. End chapter.